Hey everyone, and welcome to the fifth episode of the People's Empowerment Podcast. The podcast brought to you by Empower the People, and we are here to empower the people, and that's why we've started this show. We've got a variety of guests that we're bringing on. Some of them are members, other people are just interesting people to speak to. But today, I'm joined by Mart, who I've had the great opportunity to meet already in our meetings that we have and empower the people and the breakout rooms. Our first time we ever met, it was actually in a breakout room hosted by Woody, and we're talking about gardening and permaculture and all this interesting stuff. And it was a great discussion. And already, when I could hear Mark talk about what he's speaking about, I was like, this man's clearly quite wise. He's got some knowledge and information there. And then in a separate breakout room, or was this the first one? I can't remember, but somewhere there was another one where we're talking about the Mankind Project and how Mark's been involved with that. And we're going to get into that because it sounds like a very interesting project that's helping men. So yeah, hi Mark, welcome to the show.
Hello, hi Travis.
So
Hello everybody.
yeah, would you like to just give an introduction to who you are and what it is you do of yourself?
Well, yeah, gosh, that's a broad question, isn't it?
Yeah,
I've,
take your time.
I my calling is in and work is as an actor actually, but I just find I'm drawn in so many different directions. So I have a great love for a piece of land where put a lot of time. That's where I am right now, and I put a lot into it, planting trees and putting love into it, really. It's a little hill farm up in the wilds of sort of Yorkshire, Lancashire area. Why I say both those counties is because it used to be Yorkshire, but it's now Lancashire. So it sort of looks both ways. So I also really by strange sort of process ended up home educating all my kids. Got
Good
four
idea.
kids.
Nice. Wow,
So,
four kids. That's a task.
and obviously that was a joint choice from myself and my good lady. So, but I suppose I ended up doing 60 to 90% of that, depending, when I was working or not. Like I'd have to go away to work and we'd juggle things. So, and now they're grown up, and so I have a sort of overview of the whole process.
That's really amazing.
Well, yeah, look, there's no ideal. I'm so proud of having taken those choices, but there's no right way to do it, I think. And there's no, some people do it, hothouse their kids, and some, it's completely laissez-faire. And it was neither was my choice. It was a bit somewhere in the middle, I suppose. And but the great thing is it's a choice that demands empowerment, because yes, you could employ someone to do it, like a manager or something, some tutor or something, but in the end it means that I have to believe in myself enough, that I have learnt enough, and I have enough skills and knowledge that is worth handing over. So there's some very basic form of empowerment, but of course it extends as they grow older to some pretty high level stuff if it's possible. And when they tended to get into teens, like maths, I'm not much good at, then I'd find somebody, employ them for a couple of hours a week to come in and give them that, and science becomes quite tricky to do at home.
Yeah, Bunsen burners and that.
Well, yeah, there's all sorts of challenges, but I just saw it as my job really to take the pressure off what I saw in the system from 5 years old. I wanted to just let them keep their natural born curiosity, their lust for life, all that we come into the world with. I think most of us do. And I saw being extinguished in kids that were going to school. I spoke to so many parents who had sort of lost their kids, when they'd been a year or two in school and didn't know quite why. And it's like I just saw that there must be another way. And I don't know if home educating was going to be better or not, but I just thought there was something, perhaps you might say spiritual with a small s, that could be maintained, that they could self-determine at home, and I tended to look upon them as having original virtue rather than original sin that the Victorians sort of seem to specialize in. You know, that there's a big difference of opinion there. You know, that some people see children even now as having to be shaped and molded and taught, and that everything, pretty much everything. And I didn't that didn't seem right to me. So I saw it really as a journey of offering them lots of choices and experiences where to see where they really caught fire and where their passion was evoked, and then they could then give them more of that, you know, facilitate that. So and then if they wanted to go into school and be with mates or for whatever reason, then fine, you know, that's fine by me, because the main thing was that they should be in choice, it seemed to me. And if they wanted to go off as all bar one did at different points, one at the youngest at 11 and the other one at 13, one at 15, and the other one never really went to school at all. It just went into college to do some A-levels. You know, at least it was their choice. And I kept the idea of schools, if I could find a good one, I kept that alive always, and let them maybe, you know, with the eldest one, for instance, must have been 12, 13, I took him to what I thought was a fantastic school. And we had a look around, and, you know, I was really impressed. It was a small scale place. The only thing was he'd have to travel to it, you know, away. But anyway, it was his choice. He decided no for whatever reason. And we pulled back out of that and let him go his own way with his own style, tried to facilitate that. So long story short, that was their journey. Some things worked better than other things, but I'm proud I did it. And it was, you know, in the end, it came from, and why this is relevant is, you'll be clear in a moment. The initial seed came from the fact that I realized that my dad wasn't really around for me. And so I thought I wanted to repair that if I could. And my dad wasn't around for me only because he was so busy in the normal way of work, disappearing at like 7 in the morning, maybe 7:30, and coming back at maybe the same sort of time in the evening, nearly every day of the week, and often on a Saturday. So all the meaningful hours of the day, he was just absent. And I thought there's got to be a better way of handling the balance. Well, balance, I don't like that word, but the relationship between work and family and life. And there's got to be a way of integrating kids into adult life, adult work, if possible. And so that led me on and my wife onto a whole journey of looking at community, at how we could work together with other families, how we could have maybe some building where all sorts of different activities could happen in, that adults could be busy with kids sort of involved, but not if they didn't want to be. So they could gravitate where they were drawn to and learn about, learn about life from adults in the midst of it, rather than being corralled away into a compound called school to learn about the life that was happening somewhere else. So that was my idea, and a few of us got together. And finding the right sort of community seemed very, very difficult. Didn't want to live on top of each other, but it was going to take a lot of money to find in essence, a village where we could all sort of take over and be, and that seemed complicated. So we went through all sorts of things, but I think it was key unconsciously at the time that knowledge that I wanted to repair the relationship with my dad, that him being absent meant something. There was a void or, you know, impact to me in the way I grew up and that my best mate really said, look, there's this thing called the Mankind Project, which I just went and did this training. It's a weekend, 48 hours, called the New Warrior with Adventure Training. It's a wacky name. And he said, look, I'm not going to tell you anything about this, but you should do it. It's a deep training.
I like that.
Yeah, and it's a deep training for men. That's all he would say. And and you should do it. And we've been through, I'd shared all sorts of discussions, and I trusted him completely. I mean, we had kids the same age, and we'd gone down a parallel path for quite a while, and had the same outlook on home education as well. Yeah, I really trusted him, and so I noticed. I said, right, okay, I'll do it, and without much of a thought, and then noticed that my first opportunity had just drifted past, and I thought, oh, I didn't really engage with that, did I? And so I signed up for the next one, and it was an extraordinary 48 hours that gave me a whole new template and connectivity for living my life. I can't.
Yeah. So what actually what goes on here? So you mentioned it was the 48 hours. The warrior. What was it? Warrior.
The new warrior adventure training is
New
known
warrior
as.
adventure training. That sounds amazing. Yeah. So what goes on in that?
Well, that would be a shame to tell you in any detail because
Okay.
I don't want to spoil the movie for anybody else. But
Sure.
it gosh, the three men who started this realized there was a gap in. It was, I suppose, it was in the wake of the women's movement that really took hold in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And they realized that there was nothing like that for men in especially when it came to emotions and to how men seem to be playing out their wounded past very often, sometimes known as shadow, the stuff we unconsciously drives us. And they decided to do something about that. In other words, to create an initiatory weekend. Bear in mind the ancient history of men's community was initiation of some sort was
Yeah.
a key part, and that had just disappeared from Western life. And I think we'd all recognize that initiation was a way of a child or growing up into a young man to know that he had gone into adulthood somehow, and it was tended to be run by elders who would take the young boys away from the community, from the village, and they'd go through a set of experiences with the blessing, in some way, support, but it's still they had to meet some danger, maybe even pain. Different cultures did this differently, and they had to go through a gateway of some sort. I'm told the Vikings, young men had to go through a process of riding the oars on the Viking longship as they were rowing through high seas. In other words, outside.
I just visualized that. Wow.
Outside the oars, can you
Yeah.
imagine climbing from oar to oar down the side of a ship in high seas while the oars are being rowed?
So it's not simply just holding on for dear life. They actually have to make progress through the rows of.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so.
Wow.
That was a key test. Now, and many cultures had things involving some pain or something, an ordeal. An ordeal seemed to be a key thing. But there's other levels to this process, and I don't know a lot about the ancient historic ones, but certainly the Mankind Project seeks to fill a gap for men now, that sort of field where men could go through a gateway of some sort to know that they had moved from boyhood into manhood, and that sort of that knowledge and that step meant that they could sort of, that was an empowering thing, obviously, that's the idea, but it meant that they had the support and they were one of a group, a community of brothers, you could say, or men had gone through the same thing, and they could grow in self-confidence as a man, whereas some might say in contemporary Western life, we might see men of any age, men in their 50s and 60s, who are still, there's something very childlike about them. They're still fundamentally children. They're playing out old patterns with relationships or with their work or whatever it is, that it's just not something about it we might recognize as not being grown up.
Absolutely. There's one example that will stick with me for the rest of my life. And this man was quite intelligent in many ways, and he'd, done a lot in his life. He was 70 years old, and when it was in Australia, and I was doing a helping out with his property, and his wife went away for a little bit, and he couldn't cook. He was hopeless. He was like a fish out of water. I remember him having to ring his wife just for like the most simplest thing on how to cook a meal to keep himself sustained. And
Yeah.
fascinating, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's not uncommon, actually. I've in my experience anyway.
Yeah.
And not that there's anything about teaching cookery in the Mankind Project.
Sure, it's just an example, right? Just
Just
like
reassure everybody, but
wife's gone, I can't eat, I'm fucked. Yeah.
But the thing is, this new warrior adventure training process seeks to look at what's not working. Well, it look at what's working and what isn't working in each of our life, and to take a look at that in a safe place, to be able to stop, get out of life, go away, take a good look at why it may not be working, and what is, particularly when it comes to the psychological, emotional roots of it. The wounds, start to look at the contemporary picture. What's working, what isn't working, and what can we do differently. So this is not done in a cognitive way. This is the beauty of this thing. There's bits of cognitive things to provide doorways into stuff, but fundamentally it's experiential. And so once we have a handle on the contemporary story, we can go back to see where its roots are, often in early life. And by some very extraordinary processes, we can start to look at what sort of antidotes might be needed to look at where those wounds, if they're wounds, whatever happened back there in the story, how that can be repaired, and then form a vision for the future from that place. But a new vision, a new story, rewrite the story, basically. And this is powerful stuff. So the part of what's given is that mission for the future, and like an overarching mission, which is bigger than me, that I have a personal one, which, God, that just gets me out of bed in the morning, because I connect with my, how shall I put it? It's like every part of my being, my life, connects me up, and it gives me a clarity about where I'm going. And I made that vision from this work in that weekend, and it's
nice.
And that's personal to me, and each man gets a chance to do that, and it's something we take away from that weekend and use forever. And it may evolve, of course, as things go on, the years go by. And I've been with this since 2000, when my good friend put this to me, and I've gone back to help out run these weekends for others to do ever since. I couldn't get enough of it at the time, and I went back at any opportunity I could. But there's all sorts of other sort of nice nice is not the word, sorry, fantastic benefits, is that the men who've been through this, we share something extraordinary, and because this project is active in a great many countries and parts of the world,
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. Did it start in England or did it start elsewhere?
No, it started in the US actually in the 80s, and it sort of took fire into the 90s, and then there was a lot um, of Brits who went over to the States to do this. But I mean, they were invited, or I don't know what it was, and they decided to. This has got to get rolled out in the UK, and and it really did. And from the UK, it's been springboarded into pretty much every country in Europe, and
Yeah,
um,
wow.
and it's now it's in Canada and Mexico and Australia and New Zealand, and so. But why I raised this was because it blew my mind that when like the year after I'd gone through this, um, I was in New York and in California, and I thought, look, they say that I can just get in touch with some of the guys here, and so sure there was a contact number on the website, and I went and just sat with them in circles for an evening and did like some deep work that we did in that circle, just with men I'd never met before, purely because we had this common language, common ground, and that just blew my mind. So you can see how this ethos and this sense of community, because I think probably on balance I was pretty scared of men, growing up, and I didn't know what to make of them until, but this has sort of transformed everything, and being vulnerable in front of men was not something I learned at school. I can tell you, it was quite the opposite. To get by, I had to just
Yeah.
sort of all sorts of. There was just not a safe place to express myself freely, or any emotional vulnerability or anything like that. So emotionally, I just sort of shut down and was operating out of my head, and
It's
that was,
extremely common, amongst men.
alas, and maybe more so in the West than others, because of this, for reasons I think most of us recognize. But well, I think you can see how this sort of this background, if you like, led me to take an interest when I saw Empower the People come up, was because I like the idea of a community association where we could look at other stuff. And I'd come across oh gosh, the legal stuff when I had all time to spare in lockdown in 2020. And I started having my eyes opened in various ways by various people, and I couldn't get enough. I mean, from having absolutely despised anything legal, I could not handle just legal stuff. I'm now absolutely hooked, and I love that I'm being fed all this stuff in Empower the People, that it's stuff that I can step at a time, and I like the community vibe, and all the online stuff we can connect with. And I'm sure it's just the beginning, the way I see it, at Empower the People. There's lots further to go if people want to take it further. And obviously we're not there to do emotional sort of sharing, but it's got all sorts of fascinating angles. I love it, to be honest. And
I
it's
think that was, yeah, there's still scope for that, at least in things like the Wellness Wednesday sessions. Like that's a potential avenue or arena where a discussion like this could be opened up.
yeah, that's true. And maybe I know the Saturday, what is it? The sort
Solo
of,
scriptura.
yes. I mean, that I did into once. It's a very awkward time for me to get in, and I wanted to do it some more. But
Saturday morning, right? I know, same
yeah,
here. Simone's a real warrior for doing that every week.
but it blew my mind that so much of the law is rooted in the scripture.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's provided a really unexpected angle on all this. And I see I mentioned the sort of the S word in terms of spiritual with us a small s when it came to home education, and 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 it's certainly that is grown enormously through what I do with the Mankind Project, and I still go back and help there many times a year, and abroad sometimes. I go and help them with it happening in Sweden and France, and I'm going into Germany to help. But it's just amazing to have this community, active and so connected. I love it, and so I love to give my time to it. But I see that, to be honest, the work in Empower the People is not just an empowerment of confidence to me. I don't know what you think, Travis, but to me it's a spiritual journey first and foremost. It's not just about reclaiming this or that, but it is about that. But it's about what that means as being you know a being, a soul in on a journey of finding out who I am fundamentally in so many dark corners. And it seems to me consciousness, you know, I've often wondered, well, what is this pursuit of consciousness? Well, it seems to me it's about looking in all the dark corners as well as all the big light ones, and the lowest as well as all the highest. It's looking in all of them. And so I'm just, you know, I'm up for that now. In a way, I just wasn't there before, and I'm glad to say that now. It's just it's been an amazing path, and every part of this journey to where I am now, and as I dare say you'd agree when you look back, couldn't have got to where I am now without every piece being there. You know, all the painful stuff and the difficult and the tough times and the struggle and the ignorance and the mistakes and all that. I'm thinking, well, that had its key part to play looking back, and I can only really tell that looking back. And yeah. So
yeah, on that specifically, I've pondered this a lot. Right, does everything happen the way it's supposed to happen, or can we make the most of everything happening the way it has? And then it ties into, like, do we actually have free will? Are we choosing really to go through this, or is it we're just acting it out? It's interesting. There's all these paradoxes. It's very interesting when we get into this realm.
Yeah, I mean, you touch on something that fascinates me too. I have a good friend who's high powered in reading some sort of Indian astrology. I don't even know what to call it, but this is some thousands of years old. This isn't just about throwing out a load of tea leaves or tarot cards or something, and he's incredibly specific, and his view, I'm beginning to wonder, is maybe on the money, and that is, in a way, there is a determined, there's a story we go through that's predetermined in some form. It's not, needn't be tied, it's not tied down 100%, but there is a sort of story, phases or chapters of it that we are here to go through. But there's also free will, about how, the key thing is about how we respond to these things.
Yes, that actually, what the conclusion that I come to too, as well, is there are certain things that are pretty much scripted well to happen. Like there's just a fate, destiny, whatever. But then there might be this big moment. Then in between the big fates or whatever, there's all this variation until you get to the next big thing, something like that. So which accommodates for both, right? There is some parts that are sort of scripted, or you say chapters or fate, but then also there is free will, I guess, which kind of keeps it a bit interesting and a bit more of a variation, I suppose. And but then also it does say you could go off path a little bit, which is a bit dangerous at the same time.
And it seems, the more I think about that, though, that free choice of how to respond to a life event, whether it's personal, like I'm in a fury about something, I'm something bug. I can't sleep at night because I'm in such a state with an issue, whatever it is that's come up. There's a range of choices. I could make choices to help myself express that emotion safely. I could avoid doing that and let it leak out onto all sorts of people around me, and I could take it out on the kids. I could smash the car up. I could drive really fast and dangerous. I could medicate it, couldn't I? I could think, oh, this is uncomfortable. I better get smashed and completely numb out for as many weeks as it takes, or I could medicate it with I could take some suppressants or mood suppressants or ups or downers or whatever it is. You know what I mean? There's so many choices just on the fact that I'm feeling something that I don't like, maybe. So I think this starts to open up the range of where free will seems to me obvious, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think we have free will, and uh, I think it's kind of interesting how you can sort of maybe like use the free will that you have more effectively, or have more of a say on what goes on in this reality. Like the more you evolve, it's like you have maybe more free will, so to speak, or you use the free will you have to a greater capacity, which is quite interesting and ties into how I think spiritual evolution or personal development, however you phrase it, is ultimately how we're going to make real change in this world. You know, how we make
Yeah.
lasting change.
Yeah, I agree. And I wonder if when the culture we're in is a lot about experts telling us how to do things, what to eat, what to do, what to supplement, how to go about tackling this depression or that. You know, I think I've come to a point where I think if I can get enough of the emotion moving out, expressed, then I can actually see what I have to learn from it. You know, especially awkward emotions, you know, fear, anger, grief, maybe. But it's like if I can express them, then they seem to change eventually. But it's like it takes a risk to do that. It can be really scary to dive into this sort of tunnel of unknowing, not know where it's going. It seems like it's going to go forever, and I might never come out of it if I really go into it, dive in, you know. But there is an end somewhere. We come out into another
Yeah.
somewhere, and it may seem to take forever, but there is at some point an emergence into something else. And I think if I can trust to that, I think my trust has evolved enormously. And I didn't really have any, you know, because
That's interesting though. When you say like your trust has evolved, do you mean trust in yourself or trust in reality, or what do you mean?
both,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
nice.
I can trust to that feeling emotions is sort of okay because you know, in school and home that wasn't okay to express awkward, you know, unsociable emotions was not okay, wasn't welcome. So you know, it's not natural to me to do that, but it's become more natural to trust that doing that's okay. I can do it safely, and I make choices around it, and I can learn from it. It's actually diving into the unknown with it. I can come up with so much more than try to steer it and channel it and do something about it. Just stop trying to fix it, you know, just trying to let it move and get it out of my system. It's just energy, really.
Yeah.
It's just energy, and if it's stuck there, then it's going to be hell, and it might develop into a disease if I let it sit there too long, you know, in some part of the body. And I think that the teachings that the emotions very easily do get stuck in a part of the body. It's a really powerful one. It means like I've got physical work to do sometimes to look at that, to heal it, or just ordinarily day to day to express it, you know. So yeah, and I think I don't know, did I give you enough sort of inkling about this Mankind Project thing? As I know it was the first thing you really asked about. And
Yeah, so honestly, Matt, I think I could talk to you for hours, man, and we could just keep going and going. If we were to wrap it up, yeah, like give us a bit more information about the Mankind Project, and then I think we'll close it.
well, I suppose it's we're talking to people in the UK mainly, aren't we? Is that right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
it does happen in so many other countries, so we don't have to be. But look, if anyone's drawn to this, and it happens a handful of times a year in this country, maybe 4 or 5 times maximum, and in Ireland. And there's I think the website would be Mankind Project. What is it? Is it Mankind Project UK and I, or MKP UK and I? That may be that.
Okay, yeah, I can put the description in the show. I put the
Um,
website in the show notes.
if people want to do that, and I would say that, you know, when I did it, it was a chunk of money, and I couldn't really afford to do it, as you know. But it isn't. Let me reassure anybody who's in that boat that it isn't really about the money. I just made a financial arrangement with them where I could pay so much every month, and they were really happy with that. They're not there. It's just they're a charity in this country, and it's not. No one's making money out of it. There's no Mr. Big milking everybody's thing. It just goes back into the work, And that first training is really just opens the doorway, and there are various other things they do, and to enable the work to continue in a grassroots local level as well as in a bigger forum, you know. And they do leadership trainings and other things to continue and expand the work for men who've been through that. So, and I mentioned back when you first voiced some interest, Travis, that there are two parallel organizations in this country for women that started off. Gosh, they've been around for a good 20 years, more than that, 25, I'm sure. One called Woman in Power, and the other one called Woman Within. If you get, they have their own websites. The energy of each one is sort of different according to what it says on the tin in the title. But look, my partner, she, you know, I didn't talk about the Mankind Project stuff, what we'd done at all, but like after a number of months, she wanted a piece of this newfound self, you could say, more authentic, more connected self, and she went and did both of them and got a lot out of them. So I know a number of women who've been through that, and I can warmly recommend them too, though it's not, obviously, you know, a man is not going to be admitted, and for good reason.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for joining me, Mart. I've really enjoyed hearing your story and about the Mankind Project, and just, very inspirational what you did with your children too, man. So big ups.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. I've really enjoyed talking to you too.
I'll see you around.
All right. Bye for now.
See ya.